We all have a they couldn't punish us all story. But what's your they punished us all story? Went to boarding school. Someone accidentally hit the power on their stereo in the middle of the night. When the prefect went to investigate, someone on the opposite end of the house blasted their stereo for shoots and giggles. Since nobody fessed up, the whole house was thrown out of bed and had to do wall sits. For like ever. Nobody ever did fess up. For like ever. Some say they're still doing wall sits to this day. Someone allegedly graffitied an antique desk in one of the company bays in basic training when I was at Fort Benning back in 2010. DS's pulled the entire company on a Saturday morning about an hour before we're scheduled to hit the range for a live fire. One of the few times we're kind of happy to train. We're all in this freaking rock pit, on our hands and knees bear crawling back and forth waiting for the culprit to admit. We got our asses smoked for 2 hours. I tried to confess to one of the black drill sergeants and I'll never forget his response. Your black butt volunteered to join the army. That's the last time I ever better hear of you volunteering ever again. You're not taking this punishment for that butthole. We know who did it already. I know you ain't do this. But so you know, one of the buses broke down and we ain't got crap for y'all to do. So this is it. So get the frick down and crawl, bro. Did a group project with like 10 people. One girl didn't go to any of the meetings and didn't do any of the work. We all agreed it wasn't fair, so we talked to our teacher about it and she dropped part of all of our grades for lack of communication. I worked for a Ford supplier years ago that did metal stamping and welding. Entire weld department stopped working and went to the break room wanting a meeting with the plant manager over treatment and working conditions. I didn't work in that department, but I heard the plant manager walked in and counted all the people. Only thing he said was, you have 30 seconds to get back to work or all 32 of you are fired. He then walked out. The turnover rate was insane. You'll need unions. In 7th grade, we had just had an easy Spanish quiz that was supposed to be added onto our test grades. To help boost them, people were talking after the quiz, and the teacher threatened to rip the quizzes in half and just drop them, and the kids who were talking just didn't stop. True to his word, he straightened the stack of papers, and tore the whole stack clean in half, and threw it in the garbage. It definitely got the class quiet, that's for sure. Oh, crap. I went to a small Catholic elementary school in the 80s. Some 8th grade girls showed up to school wearing jewelry that was prohibited by the dress code, earrings that were too big, or something. The nun principal got very upset and proceeded to confiscate every piece of jewelry from every student in the school. When they told us this, I was somewhere between 2nd and 4th grade. I distinctly remember my first thought was, they won't take away religious jewelry too. Sure enough, they did. My great aunt had given me a gold crucifix pendant and chain for first penance. She passed away less than a year later. I was very attached to it. I still wear it despite being mostly agnostic these days. So, when our teacher handed out paper envelopes and told everyone to put their jewelry in there with their name and grade on the outside, I was very upset. Upset enough that the main office called my mom because I wouldn't stop crying. They gave us no indication of if or when we'd be getting our stuff back. When she found out why I was so upset, she chewed out the principal for mass seizing valuables from students. All I know is I got my cross back by the end of the day. I had a teacher who came in one day positively irate about bags of candy she just bought that went missing. She was convinced someone in the class had stolen them. When no one fessed up, she proceeded to keep us all inside for recess until someone confessed. About a month later, a student was looking for some supplies and opened a cabinet in the back. What did he find? The missing bags of candy. So really she punished all of us for forgetting where she put the candy. Never apologized either. TLDR. Teacher lost candy, blamed the whole class and didn't apologize. That teacher should really stop drinking on the job. When I was a 15-year-old boy at summer camp, 3 guys decided it would be a fun idea to spray insect repellent on the floor and light it on fire inside a wooden cabin in the middle of the forest. They were having fun watching the fire burn, but then one kid walked in and was obviously shocked to see a fire burning on the floor. He did what any sane person would do and used a fire extinguisher to put it out. However, using the fire extinguisher meant we had to get a new one to replace it, which meant we had to tell the counselors. which means the kids who started the fire would likely get in trouble. Needless to say, they were angry at the kid for trying to save their lives, but more on that later. Fearing the fate of being kicked out of camp, the boys who started the fire were able to manipulate 12 others into accepting the blame for it. Of course, their logic was, they can't kick us all out. Be a bro, take one for the team. It appeared as though their plan had worked. The camp directors decided they wouldn't kick out all 15 of the boys, but they had to face some other kind of punishment. They were banned from the final banquet. Only a few nights later, the closer it got to the big evening, the more rattled they got about missing the final big activity of the summer, the special dinner, the jokes, the awards, the slideshow, all the future memories that the staff put together for this night. So when it finally got there and they weren't allowed in, they were pissed. And in their minds, whose fault was it? The original 3 for starting the fire, theirs for being foolish enough to take the blame for something they didn't do. Nah, it was the boy who used the fire extinguisher. So while everyone else was out having fun, they needed to get back at him by masturbating onto his pillow all at once. And that's where the counselors walked in. That night, on the last night of camp, they called the parents of all 15 boys and informed them that their children were all on a bus on their way back to the city, and why they were kicked out. If that were me, I still wouldn't be able to look at my parents the same way 10 years later. That took a gay twist. In high school, we had a thing called sweeps, where if you were late to school, even by just a few minutes, you had to spend the rest of the hour in the sweeps room. You couldn't talk, only read or do homework. Towards the end of the year, a ton of seniors decided for their prank, they would go to sweeps. I think 40-50 kids went. You could see them all leaving at the end of the hour because it was Spirit Week and all the seniors were wearing green. Everyone thought they wouldn't punish that many kids, but boy were they wrong. Every single one got detention, and the VP and principal threatened not letting them walk at graduation, which was kind of a big deal considering 50 kids was probably 1/3 of the graduating class. They ended up letting the kids walk, but the message was clear that if anyone ever tried to pull a stunt like that again, the repercussions would be worse. Then they got rid of sweeps the next year. My school never had something like that. I would have freaking loved a silent homeroom to just get some homework done. Back in high school, our marching band used to march at the parade in Disneyland once a year and then spend the rest of the day there. During my senior year, we were told to meet up at the buses by like 10 PM or so. Turns out we were supposed to meet back an hour earlier, but nobody got the memo. So our band director issued detentions for everyone in the band. Worth it. My grade 4 teacher gave the entire class detention because we named our dodgeball team Team John Cena. My grade 8 teacher gave the entire class detention after 18 of the 22 kids admitted to misbehaving in French class. When I was in grade 2, every kid on one of the buses were banned from riding the bus. Not sure why though. My grade 4 teacher gave the entire class detention because we named our dodgeball team Team John Cena. Well, yeah, when you name your team a swear word to the IWC, of course that happens. At boarding school, they found the wrappers of 3 bags of chocolate chips that had been stolen from the kitchen. The whole school didn't get dessert for 2 months. Last month, almost 3 years later, someone finally admitted it was her. I was teased in 5th grade with the Flutterby touch. Essentially, think of me as a virus. You touch me and you wipe your hand on another kid who screams Flutterby touch and loses their freaking crap, and then wipes their hand on another kid, and so on. The 5th grade teacher ended up giving everybody, excluding myself, extra homework. That backfired. I didn't have any friends in 5th grade for the rest of the year. Dang it, Ms. C. At least you tried. Cheese touch. One person was routinely late from break at work, so they made everyone leave 2 minutes late and come back 2 minutes early. Doesn't sound bad, but the breaks were 15 minutes and we all walked out to the smoking area, which was already a 2-minute walk one way. The whole department took breaks at the same time. I worked for an unloading team at Walmart a few years back where they did this exact thing to the whole team. They even made us check in with supervisors when leaving and coming back to ensure we weren't late. Had a boss at a pizzeria who made every employee pay the amount the register was short by. Only the person who took the money was unaffected. It quickly stopped disappearing. Illegal. This story isn't mine but was told to me by my dad. At the Naval Academy in the late 60s, pep rallies for football games were banned by the new commandant. The midshipmen had a spontaneous pep rally anyway, with the general attitude being they can't fry us all. The next day the commandant called the entire brigade of midshipmen into Alumni Hall and announced that every single person was on restriction until further notice. He actually fried them all. In 7th grade history, the entire class was given permission slips for a voluntary weekend field trip with a strict deadline, regardless of field trip attendance, to return the slips. Most of the class forgot to bring them in, so some 20 of us had to come in for a breakfast detention the next week. It was actually pretty alright. The teacher brought in tang and muffins for us. It's odd to see such a huge number of stories stemming from either grade school or the army. Is there a comparison to be made? Oh, you have no idea. The military is basically a heavily armed preschool with alcohol. When I was in basic training and featuring Benning, someone left their wall locker unlocked at night after we had just been punished for that earlier in the day. Well, to get the point across, this time they woke all of up in the middle of the night and had us take all of our stuff and completely remake the barracks on the sandpit outside. Here's the deal though. Our barracks was on the 3rd floor and all the beds were metal bunk beds and the wall lockers are freaking huge. Took us all night to redo the barracks and all morning to bring it all back up to the 3rd floor. We didn't sleep that night. So at our school, the biggest in the country, on the last day of school for the final year, it was traditional for many students to have a champagne breakfast, come to school for a final assembly, to say goodbye to the teachers and collect any gear. Then head girl and boy and the prefects had an informal prisa-jiving for the student. Except my year, about half the students went a bit overboard for the champagne breakfast. Bear in mind, the drinking age is 18 here, so most of them were legal, but they turned up at school obviously drunk. At the assembly we got a sound telling off and told to leave the grounds. The prisa-jiving was cancelled. No one would be allowed to go and say goodbye to the teachers or anything. Just leave. We went down in history as the only 7th form year to unceremoniously get kicked out of school en masse. We ended up having the prisa-jiving in the car park at the local McDonald's, LOL. Many years ago when I worked for an electronics company, the management claimed they couldn't afford to give everyone a promised pay rise, so we all decided to work to rule. This meant not working overtime. After a week of this, the management decided that they would after all give a pay rise. Just after this was announcement, they sacked 10% of the workforce. Everybody on our school bus was flipping off the people from the other school bus. They reported us and we all got afternoon detention. Snitches. I thought it was the law to flip off other buses while sitting on a school bus. Basic training. A female recruit wrote how she wanted to bang a male drill sergeant in her training book, and the book was found by another DS. All the females were treated to the White House that day. The White House was a shredded tire pit that was covered, where we low crawled back and forth for a very long time. I forget why the school was P, but basically if you had more than like 8 detentions you couldn't go on the yearly field trip. This was in 8th grade. I went to a small Catholic school. The teachers had it out for the boys in my class. So as the field trip is approaching, they are throwing detentions out like crazy, even for the good kids who never get in trouble, but only for the boys in the class. By the week of the field trip, every boy in the class couldn't go. Now the parents knew the school had issues, so my mom said that anyone who can't go on the field trip can skip school and just come to my house and hang out for the day. The teachers caught wind of that and gave every boy detention the day of the field trip so they couldn't skip school. So they punished all of us. But the parents were like, frick that, and we just skipped school. School shut down a few years later as most parents pulled their kids out for another school. Was in a study abroad program that had a strict curfew. It was around when a soccer World Cup was going on, and my team was having a game ending after the curfew. Decided the whole program studying abroad was gonna watch it at a public screening because they couldn't punish us all. Came back to a very angry program manager and even more strict curfews. This was during my last year in the Air Force. From what I heard, 2 or 3 people in my squadron were caught smoking weed. The response from the higher ups was to raid our dorms, put all of us in the day room we had for several hours while they ransacked everyone's rooms looking for weed, drugs, and basically anything they didn't like. They went as far as taking some people's pee magazines and for me took a airsoft gun I had that wasn't functional, combat knife that I bought on base, and even down to taking the Bokken wooden training sword I had. I was eventually able to get them back, but the entire thing was stupid and a big waste of time. Really made it easy to decide that I wasn't re-enlisting. My dad said in middle school they weren't allowed to wear white socks with black shoes. One day everyone wore this. They suspended them all. 1950s. It was a general chemistry lab. Someone made this huge mess. No one took the fall. We all got -10% on the following lab report. We were doing a minute multiplication quiz in 7th grade, and one kid kept going and the teacher got P. She sent everyone's parents an email that we were cheating, which ended up in me getting grounded for a month. All the boys at a summer camp I went to got lectured over 3 people mistreating wildlife. They rated all of us as if we'd all taken part, even though they knew dang well exactly who had done it. Years ago we had this small dog that loved gogurts. It was absurd how much he enjoyed these things. We had them in the house all the time because there were 5 kids, but we were only allowed to have them in our school lunches. The dog would get them only when we didn't eat them, and we snuck him the treat when our parents weren't home. So one day, I'm helping my mother clean out the refrigerator so food is everywhere. This is important later. My parents get home from work one day and calls all 5 of us kids into the family room. We sit down on the sofa and my dad, all serious, asks what happened to all the gogurts. We had no idea what he was talking about. Apparently the nearly full box of gogurts had suddenly disappeared. None of us kids had any idea what happened to them. My parents demanded the thief to fess up and we all pled our innocence. My dad, frustrated with his lying children, said, "Who took them then?" "Max, the dog." "Maybe," we said, because we had just as much idea as they did. In the end my parents decided that if no one would fess up, we were all grounded. Months later, my sister and I were in our backyard cleaning up toys and whatnot so my dad could mow the lawn. I was down on my hands and knees by the deck picking up stuff when something under the deck caught my eye. I told my sister to get a flashlight so I could see better. She goes and gets one, and while she's gone I reach under the deck to try and grab what caught me eye, but it was just out of reach. She comes back and I use it to get a better view. It was a gogurt wrapper that I saw, and with the flashlight I could see a bunch of teeth marks and a whole bunch more wrappers. Our dog had stolen the gogurts while my mother and I had cleaned the fridge. TLDR. Dog stole gogurts and me and my siblings got grounded for it. Grand total of about 5 people were being disruptive in English class. Whole English class got detention after school for up to 10 minutes. In 4th grade, the whole grade had recess together. A popular punishment was to have kids miss part or all of recess and have to watch everyone else having fun. One day I guess my class got in trouble while I was in the bathroom or tutoring or something, because when we went to recess I was the only one on the playground for the first 5 minutes. Then my class got to play, but the other classes had lost half or all of recess, so we had the playground all to ourselves. But that first 5 minutes, when it was just me out there, that was strange. Like being in an abandoned town in a horror movie. My 8th grade class took a week-long trip to Washington, D.C., and we stayed in a brand new hotel. Brand new like we were the first to stay in the rooms we had kind of new. The phones in the rooms had never been used, so we were the chosen few to help them kick out the links in the system. Cut to around 10 p.m. We're all in our rooms and my friends and I are hanging out and there's a pounding on our door. Boom boom boom, we quickly shut off all the lights and get in bed. Because, obviously, whoever was knocking could tell. No one wanted to go answer the door, but my friends were whispering for me to go answer it. I said if it's important they'll knock again. Boom boom boom, I got up to go answer the door and put on my best I've definitely been asleep for a couple hours face. The school dean, who was a chaperone on the trip, was standing in front of me and says he needs to take the phone in our room. Apparently, earlier in the night one of my classmates was trying to call home to tell her parents to tell her she was back in the hotel room safe. To make a phone call you had to press 9. To dial out of the building, press 1. See where I'm going? To dial out of the state, press 1 again. Some girl trying to call her parents kept calling 911 and hanging up when an operator answered instead of her parents. Police call the hotel, who get in touch with the dean, and since no one confesses to making the calls, all the phones had to be taken from the girls' rooms. Taking the phones away wasn't the punishment because most of us had our own phones, but seeing the dean, an always grumpy man in his late 50s, come into our rooms at 10 PM in his boxers was punishment for all of us. The good news is they found one of the problems in their phone system. When I was in high school band, we traveled on 3 separate buses. 2 were the band kids and the 3rd was the color guard kids that helped the band. Band-aids, as we called them. The 2 band buses had directors' parents on them, so quiet shenanigans happened at the back of the bus undisturbed. The 3rd bus, the color guard bus, somehow managed to lack chaperones that could not help but fall asleep. They were a bunch of easily influenced teenage girls without a chaperone on a 3-hour trip one way. A couple of them decided it'd be super cool to start mooning the cars behind their bus, which happened to be parents attending the football games. Parents of band kids, dance kids, football kids, teachers, lots of them, mooned, from all angles, by teenage girls. The band director was a strict disciplinarian and wanted to know who had the idea in the first place, but nobody admitted, even though it was very obviously the captain. Since nobody confessed, ratted her out. The entire band had to run laps for 15 minutes at 4 PM before our 4-7 PM practice, when they had just cut the grass. The color guard had to run 30 minutes though, so I guess he spared a little mercy. That sounds like a very mild punishment for what would now be an OS offense. For the girls that did it anyway. Was in college living in a dorm. There were 5 restrooms, and 2 of the men's restrooms kept getting vandalized. Someone was purposely clogging the toilets with paper towels. The floors got flooded. After a few warnings with no effect, they charged the whole building, something small like $5 a person. But the vandalism didn't stop, so they just took away the paper towels. There weren't hand dryers or anything. The number of people who I witnessed just not washing their hands because of it was disgusting. Later on, someone took a dump in the boys' shower. Our lads were a real handful that year. An entire English class plagiarized, freaking copy and pasted Wikipedia pages, a paper, and thought the teacher would let the grade slide or give everyone a B or C. Nope. The teacher reported all of them, gave them perfect zeros, and took the heat from all of the parents doing the "my kid did no wrong" spiel. A lot of these stories have had me pee at how petty teachers and administrators can be, but this one, 100% behind the teacher here. In elementary school, there was this yearly program to encourage kids to spend more time reading, being read to. You had to read with your parents and log the hours and book on a sheet that was signed by them. The more you read, the more your hot air balloon traveled. If everyone in your class hot air balloon reached the end, the whole class got a pizza party. Yeah, I was that kid. I've always enjoyed reading, but my mom just didn't have the patience care to sit and watch me read. I think my brother and I managed to convince our mom to start lying when I was in 3rd or 4th grade because we were so desperate to not be the reason for no pizza party again. That's actually really sad. I'm glad you at least got her to sign off on it, especially since you loved reading. Not me, but my college roommate. He'd once parked too close to an elementary school. A friend of mine came by and said that he got a ticket. The roommate responded, "But there were a whole bunch of other cars parked there." The friend replied, "They all got tickets." Not much of a response you can give after that. D. Yup, that happened to me and my wife once. Big, wide road by a beach. Dozens of cars parked along it. One single, rusty no parking sign in the middle of it all. Every single car got a ticket. And next weekend when we went there again and parked in the right place, every car on that stretch had a ticket on its windshield. That cop must have the best numbers in the whole city. We had 5 officers at my detention center get fired for going to the sergeant and telling him that he could fire their shift supervisor, but in their words, you can't fire 5 of the 7 officers that make up the shift. Those 5 officers didn't like their supervisor because he didn't take their crap and made them do things they didn't want to do, like come to work. Sergeant asked them if they all felt that way and they said they did. He said, "Okay, give me your badges and ID cards now, you are all terminated immediately." The look on their faces as they were escorted from the building was priceless. What is your best "well that backfired" story? Decided to burn some newspaper outside in a toilet I had just replaced. because I didn't want risking the grass catching on fire. Well, heat caused toilet to explode, sending burning newspaper everywhere. Grass caught on fire. Fire literally went back at you. Had friends at a lunch table who always made fun of this girl who sat by herself. I invited her to our table one day because I felt bad for her. Yup, you can see where this is going. She immediately and 100% replaced me, and they all realized it was even more awesome to make fun of me. Jokes on them. I got to eat lunch with my civics teacher after that. Oh wow. In my first apartment I had a bag vacuum as opposed to a canister vacuum, and the bag was full. I had no replacement bags, so I used painter's tape to attach a Walmart bag. I thought I was frugal genius, and patted myself on the back as I switched it on. Didn't work at all. Almost immediately the bag blew right off, and a bunch of dirt blew all over the place. All the dirt that was stuck in the vacuum since the previous bag was full. When I was a kid I took swimming lessons. One day after lessons were done and we went to the locker rooms to change, there were some clothes sitting on top of one of the sinks. Me wanting to show off decided to push the clothes into the sink and turned on the faucet and soaked the clothes completely. We all had a great laugh. So I go to my locker to get my clothes to get dressed, and to my horror realize that my clothes weren't in my locker, and then realize that the balled up pile of clothes I failed to recognize that were now soaking in the sink were actually my clothes. I sat in my wet swimsuit until the locker room was empty and until my dad finally came in and I lied and said someone soaked my clothes. He went to the counter and grumped at the workers and they gave him some lost and found clothes. Ugly sweats that were so big they went above my head as I embarrassingly walked through the center and parking lot, humiliated by my own actions. I've never told my parents who really soaked the clothes, but it was an excellent lesson for me to learn not to be an a-hole and to know exactly what it feels like to be bullied, as I 100% took the brunt of my childhood a-holeness. Not me but my brothers. My second older brother got really bad sunburn while out at the outdoor swimming pool and my oldest brother told him to put this deep heat cream on it. This is that kinda cream you put on for muscle pain and it heats up. Long story short, my second older brother does this and has to go to hospital for heat stroke. Never seen my dad shout so much in my life, lol. For April Fool's I was planning to do an innocent prank by putting a air horn under my teacher's chair so when he sat down it would trigger it and startle him, but he got too startled and jumped out of his seat, landed on his back and got knocked unconscious. Ripping that air horn off that seat fast as heck while he's still out. Nobody seen nothing. A girl I knew dated a guy I was also friends with. Really sweet, doting guy, not the best looking, but a really lovely lad. I went on a night out with his girlfriend, my partner at the time, and his friend Jay. We drank and danced etc, and at the end of the night, my friend and Jay were kissing. We spoke the next day and she swore it was a one-off but ended up meeting him twice after that, so I told her if she didn't tell her partner, I would, as he was my friend too and didn't deserve it. In the end I told him and he thanked me. Then she spoke to him, cried a river and managed to talk him round into forgiving her and falling out with me. Been a few years since and neither one spoke to me since. They're still together but I don't know how he can trust her. You still came out ahead. You are now down one person in your life with a weak enough will to perform such emotional mental gymnastics. Would bite you if you found out this aspect of them when actually relying on them for something. One day, my school decided to give everyone that rode bike, motorbike, etc. a ticket if you rode something to school. You had to show them your ticket to get into school. Well, as you might have already guessed, a lot of people forgot to bring the ticket on the first day, and when I say a lot I mean a lot. There were literally over 100 bikes just standing outside of the gate. The policy was removed shortly after that. Sitting on an airplane doing a crossword puzzle, my pen stopped writing, so I snapped it up and down a couple of times. Pen works again. Guy beside me starts freaking out and yelling for the stewardess. I look over at him and see a thin line of black ink running from the left shoulder of his crisp, starched white shirt to the right hip of his pants. I pretended like I had been asleep, and he blamed some random kid across the aisle. The airline gave him a voucher or something to pay for the dry cleaning. That pen side-fired. Okay, I got this one. When I was a leader in training, lit, at my beloved summer camp, itching to prove myself but still a dumb impulsive kid, I also liked fire. We were on a day trip and the site had a 30-degree rock face that was hidden from the site itself. So I went to the top with a friend and a can of naphtha, highly flammable. These rocks are pitted, so I decided it would be an awesome idea to fill one and light it on fires. I was facing uphill and didn't notice that when I filled the little pit, it overflowed and ran down between my legs. So I light it. It immediately flares up down the hill, through my legs. I jumped out of the way but ended up knocking the can into the blaze and it bounced down the rock face, spraying burning naphtha everywhere. It landed on the lake at the bottom and leaked burning fuel all over the small inlet. I turned around and friend had run, so I ended up putting out 50% just stamping in my sandals. They brought in and emptied 2 fire extinguishers on it all because main camp was close by. Somehow didn't get sent home and had an awesome counselor career. Dang. Got my cat 2 cat trees because I was told she needed more vertical space. Now she doesn't use them and sleeps in the center of the floor like she owns the frickin' place. A little bit of backstory. This was when I was maybe 14-15 at school. Back then the school was well known for how at breaks the outside areas would be swarming with seagulls because everyone would throw their rubbish on the floor. There had been many times where people were crap on by the birds, which made everyone scared when they flew above. So anyway, it was our lunch break and it was coming towards the end, so everyone was finishing their food. It was a hot day, so most people ate outside. Like always, the seagulls were swarming the place, so a lot of people were very cautious because no one wanted to be shat on. Me and a load of friends were all kinda just huddled together in a circle, like now having a bit of banter like the young teenagers do. I kept looking up because of all the seagulls, right, and I see that one has taken a crap right above me. It was quite high up, so I had time to react. I decided to get everyone's attention, and then took a step back and stood there looking all smug. The plan was to have the crap land in front of me directly where I was standing. It backfired when the bird crap went all over my head, bag and uniform while everyone was watching me. You are now the only person I know who has ever literally gotten crap faced. I was with my friend walking from the subway to a bar. These 2 attractive girls came up to us and asked if we knew where a different bar was, but it was on the way to where we were going, so we offered to walk them there. One of the girls said, "Wow, that's so nice. Thank you. You're not gonna rape us or something, are you?" And I responded, "No. It'll all be consensual." She didn't find it as funny as I did and they ran ahead at the next crosswalk. TBH, they started the rape joke. You just finished it. What did they expect to hear when asking someone that question? If you said yes, they'd run. You said no and they ran. Tried to tell my best friend, at the time, that I had heard too many rumors and eyewitness accounts of her boyfriend cheating on her. She then turned around and told me that I just wanted her boyfriend all to myself and that I was jealous, and they continued dating while he continued cheating. I was quite bored one day, so I took a large stick and began acting like it was a lightsaber. This was when I was like 12 BTW. So basically, as I was playing around with it and my brother grabbed a stick and joined in, we were fighting with them for a bit when I decided to hit him in the balls because he kicked a ball into Y face earlier in the week. So I thrust the stick at his balls and there was a brick wall directly behind him. I missed and the stick hit the wall and it jumped back and hit me in the balls. I still remember that day since. Well, you hit someone's balls, at least. I was skiing with my dad on high slope on a windy day. It was slippery and I fell. Unable to stop, I descended about 100 meters on my butt before stopping. I was still a little shocked trying to stand up when my dad stopped right before me to mock me, but it's still slippy and he fell. And he descended 100 meters on his butt before stopping. It was hilarious. I am imagining the scene on America's Funniest Home Videos. Glorious. 8th grade. Playing soccer. Guy on opposing team goes to kick ball toward goal and our goalie sucks. I dive to block it with my body. Oh, I blocked it all right. With my nuts. Mega oof. But at least he didn't get that point. I used the balls to stop the ball. I was running low on condoms, so I decided to sneak a box in my basket under the groceries because the supermarket had self-checkout registers and I'm still freaking embarrassed to buy condoms. Totally backfired. I scanned the condom and threw it in the bag in a split second. This lady, I'm assuming the store manager got suspicious and walked up to me and asked me if I'm sure I scanned everything, then mentioned the yellow box. I remained calm, pointed out the item on the screen, and all of a sudden all her professionalism went away and a stupid smirk appeared on her face. Then she just had to crack a joke in front of all offered customers. She said, "Do you know how to use them?" Then walked away. Butthole. For your information, you can Amazon them. Totally worth it. I had a really bad number in the Vietnam era draft lottery and joined the Navy Reserve to avoid the draft. I was walking down the road wearing Navy uniform, and a guy in an Army uniform walking the other way said, "What the heck are you doing here?" He had graduated high school 2 years before me. I did one of those fake look around to make sure nobody's listening and said, "Don't tell anybody," but I think I figured out a way to keep from getting drafted. We had a pretty good chuckle over it. We were in Da Nang. Once I had this stupid idea to go out with my best friend and my crush together. I thought he could help me get together with her, leaving friend zone. Well, sometime after that they started dating. Yeah, been there. This actually happened to my teacher. She entered an axe throwing competition and while winding up before throwing, it was behind her head. When she threw it, she hit the back of her head with the handle. She knocked herself out and the blade of the axe almost sliced her head. I've heard of a guy who was drunk and hit himself directly to the head with a tomahawk and he had permanent brain damage. When I was 9, my older brother went to punch me. I thought he was going for my face, so I ducked. He was aiming for my stomach, but dang did he connect with my nose, breaking that right away. One time my brother punched me in the shoulder, but his wrist wasn't straight and he ended up with a broken wrist. The bruise on my shoulder was quite the trophy. Met a guy at work after a bad breakup in uni. He was cute, so I figured we could hang out for the summer and I'd never see him again, but he could be my distraction. Been together 8 years, married for 1. Oops. Wholesome backfire. After a night of heavy drinking, a friend and I spot an abandoned building on the walk home. Thinking it would be a good idea to climb in through a second-story window, I give him a boost onto the balcony, promptly slipping and ending up elbow deep in a first-story window. Cue a late-night early morning trip to the hospital, and me waking up with 11 stitches in my arm. Sucks, but in hindsight I'm lucky to be left with a scar and no significant nerve or muscle damage. Joke to my friend about how he had to wipe his dog's butt. BC, the dog got diarrhea. My cat then shat on her blanket right next to me, and she was so smug about it too. Was told a rumor about a girl I used to be friends with having a big sexual adventure. I told these dudes to maybe not spread it around because 1, no one's business, and 2, rumors like that really eat at people. I heard the rumor again the next class, so the following period I told the girl since she was in that class. Quietly I say, "I'm not saying this rumor is true, but I think you should probably be careful with the personal information you disclose to people. Not everyone will do the best for you." Of course she instantly asks why I'm saying this. I tell her. She angrily says the girl's name, whom I stopped being friends with 2 previously. I didn't know it was her who told. Just keep stuff you don't want everyone knowing to yourself. Okay. By the end of the day, I have these girls trying to come at me. The other girl said that I made it up because I just wanna make them not friends too. The first girl believes her because she's dumb as rocks in the first place. Good thing I'm intimidating to people, so I wasn't bullied or anything. But god dang, I was seriously having the best intentions for a girl I didn't even talk to at that point for being crappy previously. When I was a youngin, I would make stuff at my house out of whatever I had. Like one time I made a hacky sack by cutting a shiny old bathing suit up that I had and sewing it up into a ball stuffed with Mardi Gras beads. This other time I DK what I was making, but I had the idea that I was going to melt 2 balloons together with a lighter. So I start lighting one balloon and it pops and melted rubber flies into the back of my hand and burned it so bad I had a bubble on the back of my hand, and 20 years later the bubble scar is still there and it is black. Gonna need to see a pic of that. This one kinda fits but didn't backfire on me. I was invited by a friend of mine to join in with a Friday ladies game night that she hosted, and I was excited to meet new people and play new games. After a few weeks, My host friend asked if I could stop coming over on Fridays and instead join her on Saturday nights because ladies from the Friday night group were that when I showed up they actually played games. Saturday game nights were awesome. We made crazy snack foods, played games, and if the game ended too soon we watched movies. So wasn't a backfire for me but a backfire to those who go the game night and expect to not play games. Me and my friends were playing Uno, so I put down 4+ card, then everyone after me put down their 4+ cards and I ended up picking 24 freaking cards. Wow, you have 4 friends, that's the amazing part. I decided to try and cook beans and left them for half an hour full of water. Came back with me realizing I kept the temp high and freaking set the beans ablaze. Let's say my mom whipped my butt hard. My dad did that to tomato soup when it was just the 2 of us at home once. He just left it on medium for like an hour and a half. He brought up the pot with a crusty layer of red covering the inside. We went out to eat that night. I nominated myself and my GF for homecoming royalty, hoping we could be king and queen for our senior year. She won. I did not. This occurred this week. I'm fine though. I work in a small kitchen. As a joke during final briefing of the night I asked the head chef in front of everyone why the pastry section was stashing all the bananas ordered for staff to eat. Next thing the head chef blows up at the pastry chefs, saying why wasn't the bananas used for an ice cream or something, and they all got warnings. Head chef didn't know they were for staff and pastry hated me for a solid week lol. I was 18 years old, fresh out of high school, driving my brand new graduation gift Mustang. I was cute and in great shape and perky, and I knew it. Dad sent me to the local hardware store, back when it was an Ace Hardware in a strip center, next to the grocery store, not the Home Depot style warehouses of today, to get something for him, and I was more than happy to oblige. I knew what I was doing. I pulled right up to the front of the store in my shiny red car, got out and could feel all the teenage boys who worked in the store watch me walk in. I sauntered to the counter and said, "I need a such and such. Can you help me find it?" I was helped out by 2 or 3 boys who helped me find what I needed. I was followed by them all back to the counter at the front of the store to pay for it, where I smiled sweetly and said to them, "Thanks so much for your help. I may or may not have batted my eyes a little." Then I turned around to leave the store and walked smack into a plate glass window. Everyone in the store let out an audible "ooh," and those sweet, helpful boys just laughed and laughed. I knew then and there that I would never be that kind of girl again. God was watching me, all full of myself, and said, "You need a little humility. Here, let me show you." Lesson learned. I may or may not have batted my eyes a little. You had me laughing right there. Middle school PE. There was a particular girl in the class that I had a crush on and wanted to impress. So during the mile, which I loathed, I decided to make a big show out of running as fast and gracefully as I could past my crush and her friend. I heard giggling behind me and realized that I had failed miserably. My PE teacher held my feet during sit-ups near the NBC. I was struggling to keep up. I farted. Chubby slow kid gets help. Farts? Thank God I have a better diet now. When we were kids, my friend passed me one of those bouncy ball eggs, trying to convince me it was a real egg. So obviously I threw it on the floor, shouting that's not a real egg. At that moment the egg hit a curb at exactly the right angle for it to come hurling back at me and smack me straight in the nose. It all happened so fast I was laughing through the tears. It hurt so much. You know the inside of your shoe and when it starts rolling up? Well, that happened and I feared it was because my feet were too sweaty and came to the conclusion that liquid was making this happen. So, I tried putting glue in there to keep it down but accidentally put them on before they were dry. Messing me shows up. Messing me shows up. Read this in a normal voice, which then turned Irish at these words. Not me, but my dad's friend. He wrote a program for a big fruit and other produce company, and they wrote in the contract that he would get a 10% bonus paycheck for all the money he made the company. Well, he made the company well over $1 million, and the company decided that that $100K was too much, so they rediscussed the contract with him. To give him 5% of it, he agreed. A few days later they fire him and IDK if he ever got the bonus. He may have or he may not have, I forget that part, but holy crap, that's fricked up. When I was a kid, I caught a beetle and tried to set it loose on my sister, who was afraid of bugs, and so it flew back toward me, and I ran away from it and into a door frame. Gave myself a black eye and didn't live it down for the longest time. I pulled on a rubber band with malicious intent and got hurt myself when it launched in my face. Entire minutes of plotting ruined. Inconceivable. I was in middle school, and keep in mind, I have a mild disability. Anyway, so it was lunchtime and I was in my walker. I had hardly any help those days, so I was forced to carry an entire tray by myself. A walker requires 2 fricking hands. So me, being stubborn and without help, I tried to carry it all myself. I dropped the entire fricking tray and dang near fell out of my walker. Literally backfired. I got into an accident recently that was my fault. I rear-ended someone fairly fast. The impact of course frightened me, especially since my car was totaled and I was practically in her trunk. Immediately on impact my brain said, holy crap, you are in her car. Get out. I threw the car in reverse and plowed into the car behind me. At the time it seemed logical to get my car out of her car. Police showed up. Assumed it was the girl behind me that caused it all, until I sheepishly got his attention to tell him. My gut said to get out of her car. The plan backfired. My insurance skyrocketed to $400 a month. I will never follow too close again, and if an accident happens, don't floor it in reverse. I was prepping wire for an electronics project. I was stripping USB phone charger wire to get some wire so that I didn't have to buy some. Anyway, I didn't have wire strippers on hand, so I instead whipped out a pocket knife and was cutting away the wire sleeve. The knife slipped and sliced my thumb clean open. I've had a scar on my thumb about 3 centimeters long to this day. TLDR, I scarred myself because didn't want to buy a wire stripper and used a pocket knife instead. Literally any pliers with a cutting part would have worked. Even scissors would work. A knife is a terrible idea. I was being bullied. I was around 10 and I was watching anime and saw the main character defend himself. So I was gonna attack my bully. The move I was gonna use was from the anime, so I tried and failed. I tripped and fell flat on my face. My teacher caught me on my phone in class and told me to give it to her. So I took my phone out of my case and gave the case to her. I sat back down and the teacher was just staring at me until I said, "What?" She then made that coughing noise they all do to indicate that I know why she's staring at me. To make things not worse than it already is, I got up and gave her my phone, then sat back down. The entire class laughed at me. Man, you've just got to laugh when that sort of thing happens, and then it looks like a total boss move. I was once clearing off a property I was supposed to be living on with my ex, and it had previously been used for junk storage. This is out in the country, so we started throwing the small trees and brush we cut down into a pile in the middle of the property, planning to have a bonfire. The genius I am glad to be parted from decided to use the cushion from an old couch and some gas to start the fire. Basically made diet napalm. Ended up melting part of my shoe trying to contain it. Buddy and I were burning brush in his fire pit on New Year's and were admittedly drunk as frick. So I was pouring more gas on the pile to get it to take faster and it caught the nozzle on fire. In my infinite drunken wisdom I decided to shake the plastic can and spread burning gasoline everywhere but where I needed it. Dropped it because it was hot and the fire melted a hole through the plastic and it drained into the ground, setting the ground on fire for a good 2 hours. What's a rule that was implemented somewhere that massively backfired? My city has issues with loud bikes vehicles. So as a deterrent, the city put up decibel meters that displayed how loud your engine is, similar to those signs that read your speed and display it to you. But instead of deterring anyone, people would pull up to these signs and rev the heck out of their engines to see who could get the highest decibel count. The city took the counters down within a week. I work in manufacturing and we get paid piece rate, so the more I run the more I get paid. We also have a base hourly pay rate of $10 HR. So whichever pays more, the hourly or the piece rate, is what we get paid for the day. On bad days sometimes they bump us to $12 HR for the day, and when we train new people we get paid $15 HR to compensate for having to slow down or stop our machines to teach the new people. The big boss, my boss, came in last week. Now he used to work on the line like I do now, but you can tell he's living comfortably in his corporate life and has forgotten some of the bad parts of this job. He told my boss that we are to no longer receive training pay because, by his logic, if we are working with someone we should be making more than $15 HR. Anyway, and these past 3 weeks or so we have been doing a lot of training. So a few of us got together at the end of the day and agreed, if they aren't paying us, we won't train people. We will teach the new people enough to make us some money and leave the training to the designated trainers. 2 people split between 15 or so new hires, but they make $17.50 HR. The policy lasted 4 days. Buddy of mine told me about a happy hour promotion a bar ran close to his campus. Apparently the special was something stupid like 50-cent beers that lasted until the first person went to the bathroom. As he tells it, the first few weeks went without incident, but once it got more popular, people were going to extreme lengths to not be that guy, including wearing adults' diapers. Once people tried to covertly pee in corners and trash cans, the bar cancelled the promotion. Hawaii had a rat problem following the influx of European visitors. Rat stowaways. It was a big problem because many species of Hawaiian birds are only found in Hawaii and had never had predators. The rats were destroying the native bird population, so they decided to bring in mongooses. Yes, that's the plural, to kill the rats. Problem is that rats are nocturnal and mongooses are diurnal. They never see one another. Both are now happily feasting on whatever is left of the native birds. Fun fact, this actually inspires the use of Alolan Rattata and Yungoos in Pokemon Sun and Moon. At my old job, some people abused lunch, so they made a few of them text in when they started and finished lunch. One guy specifically would text the start time, place he got food, his order in detail, the address, price, etc. Even when he bought a snack while out. That stopped a week later. Worked for a marketing firm that often locked you out of the building if you weren't back in your cubicle by the second your break was up. They revoked your break the next day as punishment. This is not legal here in New York State. They got into a lot of trouble. I once saw a true crime show that was about a kidnapping turned murder case. 2 guys had abducted another guy for his car, I think, and had him in the trunk. The perps started talking, and one of them said, you know, if we get caught, the sentence of kidnapping is the same as murder. So, we might as well kill this guy. That way, we have less chance of getting caught. The chilling part was that the poor guy in the trunk probably heard every word, comma. When Domino's said all pizzas would be delivered in 30 minutes or less or your pizza was free, all the delivery drivers kept getting in car accidents to get your pizza to you on time, so it wouldn't come out of their paycheck. It was a short-lived venture. School I go to has a rule that says if you come late 3 times, you get an unjustified absence, which lowers your grade quite a bit. So if someone is late they pretty much always skip class so they can get an absence that can be justified by simply signing it. Also, the infamous Barbados vs Grenada soccer match. The organizers of the 1994 Caribbean Tournament Cup had a rather odd change to the rules for extra time. If a game was still drawn at full time, it would go to extra time but the first goal scored would win. This is perfectly normal, the golden goal rule. What was different is that they ruled that winning this way would count as having won by 2 goals for the purpose of tournament qualification, instead of just 1. Barbados went into a match against Grenada needing 2 goals to qualify for the main tournament. If they lost, or won by only 1 goal, Grenada would qualify instead. Under the regular rule, this would mean that if the match went to extra time, there would basically be no point Barbados playing because even if they scored, they would only win by 1 goal and not qualify. But the 2-point rule would motivate them to play on. Sound good? Well, you might be able to guess what happened. The match looked like it was about to end with Barbados 2-1 Grenada. A win for Barbados, but not the 2 goals they needed. So Barbados deliberately scored an own goal in the last few minutes of the match, making the score 2-2, hoping to trigger extra time and a chance to score the magic 2-value goal. The Grenada players quickly realized they could do the same, score an own goal to make the match 3-2 to Barbados, which would have Barbados winning by only 1 goal, so Grenada would qualify. But the Barbados players realized that too, and so they began to defend Grenada's goal. So for the last 7 minutes of the match, Grenada were trying to score a goal in either net, since scoring a goal against Barbados would give them 3-2 and they would win the match, and scoring in their own goal would make it 3-2 to Barbados, so they would lose the match but win the qualification, and Barbados were defending both. Amazingly, Barbados did actually manage to do so, successfully defending themselves while half of their team were defending Grenada's goal against Grenada, and then scored the golden goal in extra time and qualified. Middle school wanted to create a trash-free environment, so they removed the trash cans from the parking lots, halls, and cafeteria. Then just told the kids to toss your trash when you get home or in a classroom. The amount of litter skyrocketed overnight. After a week or so they brought back the cans. A salon I worked at one day decided to drug test the hairstylists. Out of 12 stylists, 11 failed. The manager texted everybody the next day and told them to come to work. I worked at Macy's one Christmas and found out the reason why you can never find anyone at the registers is because they don't allow employees to stand at the register because it's intimidating. I can't tell you how many times I gave up trying to purchase something there because I couldn't find anyone to ring me up. I used to work at a semiconductor lab, looking for defects in computer chips with an electron microscope. The work is complicated, precise, and easy to frick up. One wrong move, and the sample is toast, a lip, lost in processing, as they say in the biz. Management got really angry at lips and started clamping down really hard on technicians who did them. If you fricked up a sample, you got written up. The problem is that not all jobs are created equal. Some jobs are really easy, and other jobs are really hard and risky. So, the smart technicians started taking all of the easy jobs, and the idiots who didn't know any better started taking all of the hard jobs. The lip rate then went up, and it created a really contentious atmosphere in the lab of people screwing each other over to take the easiest jobs. Morale plummeted, and people started leaving to go to other groups that weren't crap sandwiches. This drove lab output down even further. My last job got a new facility head. She didn't like the fact that we wore shorts in a kitchen in the summer when temps would get over 100. She made a new rule that shorts weren't allowed, but skirts were fine. My supervisor told me I didn't have the stones to wear a skirt to work. I am a male. Guess who showed up to work the best day in a skirt? The new rule lasted about a month before the new leader got tired of cross-dressers running around the facility. Once I started it, all the other guys started wearing skirts as well. I do not miss that place. A hotel I used to work for decided they were having an alcohol-free holiday party. This didn't sit well with the people who'd been working there for years and were accustomed to a full bar at the party. The staff parking lot ended up being full of people drinking in their cars trying to get a good buzz to carry them through the party, and most people ended up getting way drunker than they would have, so the party was a crap show. Friend had a non-alcohol wedding. Nearly everyone took ecstasy instead. Complete opposite of the sober event the parents wanted. You have to eat whatever you touch was a rule in my kindergarten, which led to all the children touching all the food to call dibs on it. Washington state made it mandatory for schools to drop their room temperatures to save on electricity. The result? Teachers brought their own heaters into their offices and use of electricity increased. I once worked at a pizza place. Our manager got tired of the colorful language one day and decided to enact a swear jar. She said she'd charge us a quarter for every time we cussed. My co-worker Jay was the first person to get penalized. She said, "You owe a quarter." He popped a dollar bill in and said, "Take a freaking dollar, freaking B." It didn't last long. Ahahaha. I worked somewhere that did a swear jar. I just buy my swears for the day. When I quit they gave me all the money in the jar because most of it was mine anyway. What is the most romantic thing you have done for someone that has either backfired or was not received well by the person you did it for? I worked with this girl at a Ruby Tuesdays, and for her birthday we all went out for drinks. We were all friends and I think she knew I liked her at the time, though I hadn't made movie yet. She put off this rocker vibe, tattoos, colored hair, Loved 80s hair metal and rock music in general. So for her birthday I decided to burn her a CD of all of my favorite songs from the band The Kills, because lead singer Alison Moshford kinda reminded me of her and I thought that their music would be right up her alley. So I burned the CD on my computer, decorated the CD cover with Sharpie, made it look really cool. I wrapped it up with fancy wrapping paper and a bow and gave it to her at the end of the night. I didn't wait for her to unwrap it, partly because I was still nervous about her reaction to my gesture and partly because I didn't want to put her on the spot while we were out amongst friends. I figured she would just let me know if she liked it at work the following week and I would use that as an opportunity to ask her out. Cut to next week. There was a day that I was off and she was working and so was a close buddy of mine from high school. I come in the following day for work and he pulls me aside and says, "Dude, you should just forget about her." He goes on to tell me she had basically crap talked my gift saying, "I can't believe he did that. I don't even like The Kills. My friend and I are really tight," and he's very outspoken and defends me saying, "Are you kidding me? You should be so freaking lucky that anyone gives a crap about your birthday at all." When I heard about that incident it killed any interest I had in her. She never even thanked me for the CD at all. She just never mentioned it and I moved on. Glad you had a good friend on your side at least. Any friend that stands up for you when you're not around is one worth keeping for sure. My girlfriend at the time had this friend who passed away, so I went out and bought Chinese sky lanterns, little hot air balloons. Pretty much. We wrote messages to her friend on them and launched them in the sky from my backyard. Hers careened right into a tree and almost set the whole dang thing ablaze. Why send a lantern when you can sacrifice a tree? I took my ex to Paris. Had the whole weekend planned. We went to the Eiffel Tower at night. Had a picnic. Basically did it all. She dumped me 2 weeks later. She said I wasn't romantic enough and didn't tell her I loved her enough when we were in Paris. Okay. She wanted to break up before the trip. 100%. Had a girlfriend come live with me after being in a not so great situation for nearly a year in another state. Was planning for 8 months to have a dress she had been dying to get waiting for her under the Christmas tree when she arrived because she hadn't had the cash for groceries, let alone a nice dress. So, she got super excited when she saw the box and opened it right away. I bought the wrong dress. Literally whispered the word sweet nothings into my new girlfriend's ear. Whispering sweet nothings is a saying or general term used to describe a set of compliments or words intended to flatter or woo a lady. This was my attempt to be sexy, romantic in a humorous sense. At the very least, I thought she would find it funny. I thought wrong, however. I was unaware that this was something her ex used to say do on the regular. So I did not come off sexy or romantic, but actually repulsed her since I reminded her of him at that moment. Try nasty everything. Booked a spontaneous romantic trip to Paris for my girlfriend in college during a long weekend. Apparently, we both get grumpy as heck on long flights and basically spent the weekend fighting, so not worth the little money I had. That's why I drink heavily then pass out for 9 hours on long flights. Made a huge plan to ask my crush to prom. Made signs to her house asking her but didn't put up a name saying who did it. Well, turns out her neighbor had a crush too and took credit for it. She said yes to him. Nobody believed I did it and they're now married. That's a little rough. On the bright side, it seems you have a gift for unintentional matchmaking, so that's something. I got painting lessons for a girlfriend because she was getting into painting. She took it to mean that I thought her painting sucked. She never took the lessons and I never got my money back. Sounds to me like she was the one who thought her painting sucked. I emptied my wardrobe cabinet and filled the cabinet portion of it and placed on the shelf flowers, chocolate, a stuffed bear and numerous candy that she loved. When I told her to get my hoodie out of the cabinet, she opened it and said it's not here and then proceeded to close the cabinet. Welp. Did a large portrait of my at the time girlfriend. We had been fighting and had not spoken in a few days, and I decided to do something I thought would be romantic, and drew a portrait from my favorite photo of her. She got mad and said it made her look like crap. Gee, thanks. After the date I dropped her off in the parking lot where her car was parked. We said goodbye and no kiss. It was our first date. She got out and began walking across the parking lot and I suddenly got the courage to whip my car around. Stop right in front of her, get out, and kiss her. In my head it was like something out of a film. In person, I pulled up to her, forgot to put it in park, got out, walked away from the car. She looked at me horrified and pointed. I turned around and ran towards my car as it slammed into another parked car. Just a typical day in my life really. Decided to make a bold move with a close lady friend. Invited her over for a home-cooked meal on Valentine's Day in my crappy college apartment since neither of us were seeing anyone. Pretty smooth, right? I thought so. So I cook a pork loin and some pasta something or other, and purchased an expensive $12 bottle of wine. She'll be here any minute, I kept telling myself. At around 9 PM I texted her. She let me know that she assumed the invite was a joke. She did eventually sheepishly show up. We are now married and I remind her of this every Valentine's Day. I got my very anxious and overstressed ex so a package of 3 deep tissue massages to her place that we had gotten a couple's massage from. Her first massage ever and she really enjoyed it. A few months later it was reported on the news that the owner proprietor of that spa was molesting and threatening women while giving them massages. In 8th grade, I tried to hop over a little mini fence by the pay area to impress the boy I liked. Needless to say I did not make it, and instead ripped the whole back of my pants, exposing my prepubescent butt to my fellow peers, while also falling forward and smacking my face into the concrete below the fence. Needless to say when the boy expressed his disinterest about me to his friends, I was not surprised. You went face down, butt up, that one is on him. Not me, but my boyfriend, and at first I hated it but it really grew on me. 7 years ago, he promised a mini weekend getaway, a romantic picnic at a secluded beach and afterwards an intimate view of the sunset. First he came to pick me up about 2 hours late. Later I found out he was busy preparing everything for the picnic. We drove there, but luckily for us, a 4th grade class trip arrived. We quickly tried to find a place somewhere else. When we found a spot, my boyfriend told me to go ahead alone. I look back and see him pulling an enormous cooler, barely budging because of the heavy load. When I go over to him the cooler tips over and all the ice and contents fall in the sand. He quickly starts shoving everything back inside, cursing under his breath and saying sorry over and over. The section of beach we found was dirty. The water looked like sludge and there was graffiti all over the rocks behind us. The drinks and fruits were covered in sand and the sandwiches had water in them from the cooler. We later realized there was sewage in the water, which was why there was a horrible smell and a disturbing amount of flies. Needless to say, we didn't wait till sundown. He didn't have money to buy anything else because he spent it all on ice and drinks. I paid for our Burger King meals. I hated it. I thought it was the worst experience ever, but later I went home and realized how hard he tried to make my first real summer date special. 7 years later, we're still going strong. OMG. Or, I've been there and done that. You have no idea how terrible you feel being the boyfriend in that situation. Senior year in high school I had a girlfriend who I had been going out with for a while. With graduation getting close and us having different plans for our futures, things were getting tense and our relationship was getting rocky. There were really tall cliffs over the lake in the town I lived in. Our first official date was there and in the early days we spent a lot of dates there at those cliffs. When we were rocky we hadn't gone to them in a while, so as a way to revitalize our relationship I decided to go there with her. It was really still and there was fog over the lake. It's a great lake so it's massive and it was unusual for there not to be at least some waves. We were sitting on the beach under the cliffs. She seemed happy and asked why I had wanted to come here. I explained my reasoning to her. I looked over to her and her face was in her hands. She said she wanted to break up. So yeah, that was rough. But it's been a few years so now I can look back at it and laugh. I thought this was going to end with someone falling off a cliff, so at least you both survived. To celebrate our 5th Valentine's Day together I was going to replicate our crappy first meal together over candlelight. It was banquet chicken patties with marinara sauce and mozzarella melted on top with pasta and a dill bag salad. In the days leading up to it, when she asked what I was going to do, I told her make a special meal. She laughed and said probably just make the same food we did years ago or something dumb. So, needless to say I went to plan B. I used to write my boyfriend one sonnet per week about how much I loved him. I called him to tell him I got into the writing program at my university. He told me he'd been seeing someone else for 2 years, that he hated my writing, and ripped up all of my poems on the phone for me to hear. What an butthole. I hope you've moved on. Walking around at recess with my life or death crush Christina in 5th grade. I'd been planning this moment for weeks. She was a small girl. I told her she reminded me of strawberry shortcake. She asked why and I responded because you're short and sweet. She did not respond and I'm still dead inside. It's cool, you'll probably recover by the time you're in 6th grade. This is one I just remembered while scrolling through these replies. My entire high school career I was goth, always wearing band tees and combat boots, really grungy. It was just my style, and I liked it. I liked a guy who was friendly but didn't seem interested, so I decided to come to school one day dressed pretty, with pink lipstick and a skirt and normal boots. I thought for sure he'd see me as an ugly duckling turned swan. Everyone laughed. I was teased all day about my makeup. The girls were whispering about how dumb I looked for trying to dress like them. The guy I liked didn't take notice and started dating another girl in my class. And surprisingly, Carrie was my favorite book. Man, this hurt to read. I was one of those girls in high school who wasn't concerned with my appearance at all, and I didn't get teased for it too often. But as soon as you show that you're trying to put effort into it, kids are ruthless. My ex and I were to get married in 18 days, and we were really stressed out about the wedding. So I left work early, got a bunch of things, cooked dinner, set up a little scavenger hunt of memories to remind her of why we're together, which then led her to the dinner table with her favorite meal with candles. She then broke up with me, lied about why she did it, and I found out a few weeks later that the reason we were having trouble was not wedding related. It was because she was with someone else. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Spoiler, not fun at all. I booked a weekend at a nice resort up north after the first decent snowfall of the year, and one of the options was a sleigh ride. I thought it would be like a Hallmark card. Couldn't have been more wrong. First of all, it's way below freezing, but we were dressed for it. The horse had constant gas for the duration of the trip. Also, that horse doesn't give a crap that we're there. He's clipping trees, farting, hitting rocks, all in a sleigh with no suspension whatsoever. Hold on. This is where it usually tips over, our guide says. As if bouncing around on solid wood behind a fart machine wasn't bad enough, now it's apparent that we can just fall over any time. It's not that uncommon, though I've never seen it on a Hallmark card. We came back cold, tired, and in pain. You know what's more fun than a ride on a one-horse open sleigh? Drinking inside in front of a fireplace, or anything. Anything is more fun. Thank you for sharing. I laughed. I once had a car breakdown at the very beginning of my relationship with the girl of my dreams. However, me being underage couldn't rent a car, but I could rent a U-Haul. For just $20 a day and but a few dollars for extra mileage, I rented a U-Haul and was on my way to her house to pick her up for what promised to be the most awkward date of her life. Until I pulled up, that is. For you see, once I arrived I saw her family moving boxes from storage, and they had a lot of stuff. Like, a lot. And they saw me pull up in a U-Haul and thought I was just the greatest help. So I instead had to help them all day with boxes. No date for me. But we're engaged now, so yep. In a thread full of depressing stories, I'm really glad you posted this. I went on a date with my girlfriend to a bridge on a river that turned out to be the first date with her really crappy ex. And if that wasn't enough, as we left we walked by a load of druggies dealing H. Here sweetie, I bought you some dope to help you forget about him. Cooked Valentine dinner for an ex back in like 2002. Was making some chicken. Put it in a pot to cook. Me and girl hang out while cooking. Get a little preoccupied. Afterward I think, oh crap, the chicken run to kitchen naked. Go to grab lid off. Apparently I used my roommate's pressure cooker. I didn't know what a pressure cooker was, but I do now. I forced the lid open and got boiling water all over my stomach, arms, and crotch. Spent Valentine's Day in a getting burns treated. An even hotter evening than you expected. I surprised my fiancée at her work with a bouquet of flowers. She thought it was creepy and told people I snuck into her work and security had to change the codes. I simply walked up to receptionist and said I had a delivery for her and was escorted there. Turns out she was having an affair with her boss and was gaslighting me to make me look like the bad guy. It clicked for me because I always thought the only difference between a creepy gesture and a romantic one is how you feel about the person doing it. There was a girl in high school I liked. Left a note with a rose and a poem on it in her locker. Next day the principal called my parents and security took me into their office to ask me why I was harassing her. Embarrassing AF. Bought a bouquet for my girlfriend. Her mom took a look at them and said they were poisonous. Girlfriend now thinks I tried to kill her. Spent a month and a half teaching myself how to make origami roses because she liked origami and was not big on flowers. She had said numerous times she thought origami roses were really charming though. I hid it from her as best as I could. I spent hours on YouTube trying to figure this out. I wanted to burn my own house down on numerous occasions because of the amount of struggle involved here. Thought this was going to be romantic AF. Made 12, each with stems and leaves and each one was a different color. Put them in a vase and presented them to her. Her reaction was about the equivalent of "that's nice." Pretty much zero appreciation. I would also like to point out how ridiculously difficult origami is, and I have utmost respect for people that do this proficiently. If you are good at origami, hats off, and I hope it came more naturally to you than it did me. I wanted to play in traffic for the duration of trying to learn this. It's amazing how something so seemingly simplistic can be so impossible to execute. Was my girlfriend's and I 3-year anniversary. Before I left for work I set up a rose petal bed, including a flower arrangement, and a gift. I left work early to pick her up for our dinner reservation. When I got to her house she still needed some time to get ready. While she gets ready she likes to play music on her laptop. So I went to change the song and her messenger app was open, with my friend's name at the top. Turns out she slept with my friend at my house a few nights prior while I was drunk. This actually happened this morning. LOL. I am planning a surprise birthday party for my wife. I'm renting a beach house and flying a few of her friends in to celebrate for a weekend. My wife handles most of our finances and watches them like a hawk. So in order to keep this a surprise I applied for a new credit card to pay for everything. We have a pretty good income, so I don't expect her to be upset over the amount that will be spent. I got the new credit card in the mail and hid it. Well, she found it, thought I had a gambling problem or something worse that would require me to hide money. I explained why I had it, but basically had to give up the surprise. Bummer. Dude's secret Christmas presents would have been a much better excuse. Bought my wife diamond earrings. She opened them and said, but they're not the same cut as my ring. I can't wear them. Now ex-wife. That lady sounds exhausting. Got 2 rings. One with my sun and stars and one with moon of my life carved on them. We were big Game of Thrones fans. When we broke up I tossed mine into a drawer. He gave his to his new girlfriend. Ouch, that hurts. My ex and I had necklaces that formed together to make a heart, with one having "I love you" engraved on it and "I know" engraved on the other. He put a video on his Snapchat story of him burning it in a fire with everything else I gave him. Fun times. I lived in a small country town and we had a huge ice storm that lasted 2 weeks. All the power in the town was out, so I'm not exaggerating when I say it was pitch black everywhere. It had been a while since my girlfriend and I saw each other due to the entire town being iced over, including the roads. So on Valentine's night I got her a rose and walked miles to get to her through pitch black woods, loud winds, and what I'm pretty sure I heard was wolves nearby. When I gave her the rose she brushed it off like nothing really happened. Broke up with me the next day and I saw her with another guy later on that she told me not to worry about before. My boyfriend sent me flowers at work once. The guys in my office all started calling them guilt flowers because they weren't sent to me for any particular reason. They figured he must have done something wrong. I overthought this and made myself believe they were right. When my boyfriend got home he found out what happened and never sent me flowers again. Sorry, you work amongst immature dipshits. Wife and I spent a full day of heavy labor digging in flower beds and planting at our new house. That evening after showering both our backs hurt from the effort, so I had her lie down and gave her a deep back rub. She proceeded to return favor, but instead of just using massage oil like I did on her, she used icy hot Bengay kind of stuff. Felt great. She got bold and had me turn over so she could massage the front of my thighs. I of course go to full attention, so she grabs it and starts to work on that too, using the icy hot stuff all over her hands as lubricant. Ever put that stuff on your balls? Word of advice, don't. It's like a perpetual baseball bat to the nutsack until it wears off an hour later. Gave my wife a private fireworks show for her birthday on a July 4th when we first started dating. It was in the woods at night in an unfamiliar state. She thought I was going to murder her. I shaved my chest hair in form of her name. I thought I was being cute. Spent the entire afternoon by the poolside with a t-shirt on while she swam like a dolphin with her friends. Hahaha, I'd laugh at you too. My so wants to tattoo his last name on his back, and I don't understand why. It's just tacky, I guess, lol. For me and my husband's first wedding anniversary, I did this whole scavenger hunt 5 senses thing, where I got gifts for the 5 senses. I spent weeks scrapbooking the cards together and writing the clues and how they related to the 5 senses act. On top of that, I spent close to $1,000 buying the gifts. They included a PS3, all of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Naruto Shippuden, PS3 games, Naruto and Call of Duty, vape juice, taste, movies, and some other crap I can't remember. The morning of, I carefully got up super early and hid everything. When he got up, I had him start. He was bored with the scavenger hunt, asking why I couldn't just give it to him. Ended up just showing him where everything was. He didn't read the cards. The only thing he ever used was the anime and PS3, and he literally complained about it all, saying I didn't get the right game or Naruto episodes, or ISHLD have gotten the PS4 instead. I was devastated. Never did anything else like that again, even since we been separated. Side note, I was pregnant and the only one working as well. I flew cross country to surprise her. I had spent weeks working on a model of her aircraft in the Air Force, including painting it with the correct tail number and spending hours getting the crew chief hair color right. She was a crew chief. Left it on her doorstep with a note since I knew she was out. Figured she would call when she got it. She never noticed it and I ended up calling her. Once she realized I was in town, she was pissed. Said she was gonna deck me for trying to surprise her. Now she is my ex-wife after 14 years. I guess I should have known earlier. That is such a unique and awesome idea. Kudos to you for making the effort. I was seeing a girl who I really liked. She also seemed to really like me as well. One day I wanted to buy her flowers as a random act of kindness. She told me she didn't want me to buy her flowers. Okay, so a week later I went out to my friend's farm and picked flowers for her instead. I was proud of myself with the colors I chose and filling in around the sides. It looked like a bouquet you would buy at a store. When I saw her that night, I showed them to her. She proceeded to laugh and call me gay. She almost forgot them when she was going home and she just left them in the backseat of her car until they died. I stopped talking to her shortly after. Good riddance, my man.
Updoot Reddit. What is one rule that was implemented at your school or work that backfired horribly? My senior year of high school, we got moved into a new school building across from a grocery store. The builders put walls up over the plumbing for water fountains by accident, so there was a huge increase in reusable water bottles, and the school put up a vending machine entirely full of water. Now I suppose it's time to mention that this was in Washington state, where you can sell liquor in grocery stores along with anything else. So some freshmen got the bright idea to start stealing vodka from the store, access the street, fill disposable water bottles with it, and sell it to other students. This caused a huge problem with a large population of drunk underclassmen wandering the halls of the school and getting into trouble. Finally, the staff got together for a meeting about what to do. Someone suggested banning water bottles. So now students had no access to water during school hours, and everyone was enraged. There were articles written about it and parents complaining. People all over town were talking about how we had a ban on water. They eventually lifted the ban, and the vodka problem resumed. TLDR, my school had kids selling booze in water bottles and banned water. Not sure if it was exactly a rule, but my middle school once encouraged kids to not touch each other at all to reduce physical harassment cases, even friendly gestures among friends. All that did was get the kids running around touching each other around campus for about a month and a half, screaming physical harassment as they did so. To add insult to injury, they did it twice as often in front of the admin who made the presentation about it. In my dorm, if you did something that triggered the smoke fire alarm, you had to do a safety presentation for everyone on your floor. This was intended to deter pranksters from pulling the alarm. A guy on our floor was making grilled cheese in the kitchenette, and burned it, which legitimately triggered the fire alarm. Afterwards, he explained, assuming that since it had been a legitimate alarm, and not a prank, that he wouldn't have to do a presentation. He was, of course, wrong. So, the next Wednesday night, the entire floor assembled, and we were treated to a 30-minute safety presentation on the dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches. It contained literally nothing about fire safety. It was all choking hazards and cholesterol. Our RA was furious, but the student pointed out that the write-up that he'd been given just said, safety presentation. We didn't get any more presentations after that. What kind of power-crazed RA does that? My high school made students wear these neon t-shirts that read, dress code violator, if their outfit didn't adhere to the school's policy. They became so popular the school began selling them 1 week later. So, mission accomplished and some school funding. We got a new manager for our office. She was an outside hire and was trying to prove herself quickly, and she was obsessed with efficiency. So, her first week here she sent out this very rudely worded email about employees eating at our desks. We have a very small break area, 4 tables, and we have about 300 employees here, and that we all had to stop eating at our desks, because it was not efficient to eat and try to work at the same time. Through a coordinated effort by some of the more sassy people at the office, they all had their lunches at the same time and filled the break room with about 90 people. Elbow to elbow, and they all ate standing up. Literally, the next day after that happened, she sent out a follow-up email saying that we could eat at our desks, but she advised us to take a break from our work from time to time. It was pretty funny. School I attended emailed the entire student body to not use Yik Yak because students were being bullied on it. All of the students, myself included, who hadn't heard of the app immediately downloaded it and began using it. If you return a library book late, your parents would have to return it and explain why it's late. It worked about as well as you would think. The rule lasted a few months before they figured it wasn't worth the cost of replacing all the books. My 4 years of high school were full of my school trying out new policies and procedures to use in the future. My sophomore year, my school decided to make tests count for 100% of the grade, and homework count for 0%, but it was still assigned. And as you'd expect, kids did absolutely no homework. The ones that didn't retain information well, or were bad test takers, struggled pretty hard to make the grade without homework padding it. Our failure rate was pretty high that year. Then my junior year, they brought homework grades back and made a new rule that there were no due dates, nor penalties for turning in late work for your 6 weeks. We didn't do quarters. As long as it was before the next 6 weeks started, you were good. This led to students doing no homework until the last few days of the 6 weeks, and teachers had to accept and grade them all before grades were due. This put teachers under immense stress by causing them to work insane hours and spend every hour at home grading, which made them very irritable and more likely to just shove pointless activities and busywork at us until they could finish grading. This was actually in the news a couple of months ago. We had a really hot summer last year, and the boys at my little brother's secondary school were mad that they couldn't wear shorts but the girls could wear skirts. The junior leadership team brought it up at a meeting, and the head teacher jokingly went, "All right, if the boys want to wear skirts, then let them." A group of boys went to school wearing skirts the next day. Then it wasn't just a group of them. And that, children, is how Scotland was born. High school took all the stall doors off the boys' bathrooms because of graffiti or something. So I started pooping in the bathroom near the office. After a couple of times of the superintendent coming in while I was doing that, all the doors were put back on. Maintain eye contact and nod as the superintendent walks by. You now need 40 hours of community service to graduate. It's recommended that all freshmen do 10 hours a year, while the seniors start as soon as possible to get the 40 hours out of the way. The rule was gone the day before graduation because they would have had less than a 10% graduation rate that year, and it would have made the school look terrible. They did this to try to increase their reputation of being a good school. All the other schools in the area are trash though, so I really don't know why. My high school told my senior class, no senior pranks or none of you walk ha. Result, we didn't throw a prank. Instead, we threw biggest rager of the year on school property with the permission of the county sheriff as long as we took our bottles with us when we finished. The sheriff retired the next week. He was the real one. Aftermath, the administration was pissed as hell but couldn't pin it on the senior class because Sheriff Rick couldn't remember what kids were there. They started a no gum rule that made a lot of junior high kids start a black market for gum. My company, as part of its alcohol policy, said you should not drink for at least 4 hours before coming to work. When engineers got called about production problems over the weekend, they all just had a beer but could be there in about 4 or 5 hours. Weekend rule, no matter the time of day, always answer your barracks room door with a beer in your hand. An insane amount of time and hand-wringing went into my office's dress code policy. When the final draft was ultimately released, every department head had a valid reason why their staff should be exempted. So the policy wound up only affecting myself and the guy that insisted on making the policy. I violate this policy on a daily basis. When I was in kindergarten, during the morning announcements one day they came on and said, "And please no throwing snowballs. There is a chance you might accidentally get some rocks in them." You could see on the faces of all 20-some students the realization that, OMG, we could put rocks in them. My high school has a policy where you couldn't wear hats at school unless the school's mascot logo was on it. So a bunch of people just bought a patch of the logo and paperclipped them to their hats. Zero tolerance, which means if you are involved with fighting, you will be kicked out. No questions asked. They think it would means no more fighting. No. It means if the bully is beating up a kid, no one would step in, for fear of involving with the fight and getting kicked out. No one would snitch because it means the bully will target you next, and now you are involved in fighting and get kicked out. It is AS policy. My high school attempted to ban trip pants and the like. However, due to a hilariously overlooked typo, the student handbook that got sent to students and parents just said, "Students may not wear pants." We had a good laugh and it made the local news. Unfortunately, this to show the quality of high school I went to, wasn't ready for college haha. My high school had a really bad problem with students showing up to class 5 minutes late every day, so they tried 3 different solutions. First, they stopped letting us use lockers. They quickly found out that just meant that nobody brought their books to class. Next, they decided to ban use of the restrooms between class periods. Teachers started complaining about everyone asking for a bathroom pass as soon as class started, so that was abandoned after a week or so. Lastly, one week they made a ton of announcements Monday to Wednesday that all students were to be on time for class. Then on Thursday they suspended any student who was late for insubordination. Turns out that included half the football team. This occurred right before the biggest game of the year. In a town of 4,000 people, this game attracts approximately 16,000. So yeah, they gave that up as well. 5 minuets late every day? Congratulations, you have been visited by the Danny DeVito Dorito. Comment your dream and it will come true.